Good afternoon and welcome back. This is US Home Talk. We are live every Wednesday at noon and on demand at ushometalk.com or wherever you guys find your podcasts. We are your hosts, Marcus Walgrave with the South Dakota Home Team, powered by Hague Realtors, Jason Walgrave with the Walgrave Real Estate Group at RE/MAX Advantage Plus. And we'll be taking all you guys' questions during the show today. Anything and everything real estate. Our call-in number is 612-234-7585, or you can leave us a message in the comment section on Facebook as well. Good afternoon, guys. How are we doing today?
Fantastic.
Good afternoon, Marcus and Jason.
Mike, how are you? Good to have you back.
Good, thanks. It's been a while. It's great to be on your show. Great to be back. Thank you.
We got a special guest, extra special guest.
Mike
Austad. He is the owner of Dakota Radon Mitigation. The month of January, Mike, you are a busy man. I see you on the TV. I see you hear you on podcasts. You're doing radio. You're going around letting everybody know that the month of January is the month of awareness for radon.
Well, I appreciate your willingness and risk to have me on video because they tell me I've got the face for radio, so maybe I'll take that as a compliment. But yeah, it's January, it's radon.
You're here to prove then that you're diversified and you have the face for not only radio, but a little TV and podcasts as well.
Thanks.
Jason, us as being realtors, radon comes up, right? I mean, it definitely is one of the topics during a real estate transaction. Not just for buyers, sellers, usually get involved in this as well. But Mike, I mean, I know this is something that you've always had part of your business model, and that's simply for homeowners too. Radon isn't just for the transaction, and can even be for some businesses as well. So we're going to try to cover as much about radon as possible. As I mentioned, this is the Radon Awareness Week for the CDC, National Radon Action Month for EPA, and also the American Lung Association. So if you didn't hear it from us on US Home Talk, if you didn't catch Mike on TV, on our local news outlets talking about some radon, there's probably a good chance you'll probably see some of our government agencies and private agencies like the American Lung Association addressing it here during this month too.
That's right, Marcus. There is a lot of multimedia and TV, print, and employer alerts throughout states and the federal U.S. Radon Action Awareness Month, as you said. So there's lots of different ways, even billboards and magazine and TV announcements as well.
Now, it's always interesting. I think the EPA website's is a good one because you can find, where is radon located in the U.S. Last time we had you on the show, thank you, Evan, our amazing producer, being able to pull up that map. Appreciate that. As you can see, Mike and I, we do the vast majority of our business in the Sioux Falls, South Dakota area. If you're not familiar with that, it's the eastern side of the state. It's zone 1, red zone, right? And you look at in Minnesota, where Jason and his team doing the majority of their business out of the Twin Cities area. I mean, it's they're zone 1 as well. So between Jason and I as realtors, radon comes up. It comes up often through property inspections and also current clients that are just inquiring about something that they saw about Radon Action Month.
Yeah, we had actually a couple listings last week. Actually, had high radon. We were able to work through it during the inspection period, but the one came in, and I think it was at 7. The other one came in at 11.9. The highest I've seen is 14.9. I'm curious, Mike, what's the highest you've seen?
That's a typical range of what we're seeing too in that red zone, which would be the highest propensity of an elevated radon level. we're seeing the 7 to 10, 11, which is about a typical elevated average number. The highest I've seen was 93, which is in the southern South Dakota, near the
Holy
Yankton,
smokes.
South Dakota, Nebraska border. I'm not sure what the attribute was that, but it was sandy soil. It was by a river valley, which we seem to run into out there. But yeah, that number can go into infinity. But right, anything above that 4 picocuries per liter average is something you want to consider. And different states and municipalities have different data and information that people can also research as well.
Mike, when we talk about kind of the EPA standard, right? The tipping point to where EPA is going to come in there and say, hey, we recommend radon mitigation, and that's that 4.0 reading. And I can't emphasize this enough about how important it is to work with professionals in their respective industries and their respective careers and professions. And the reason why I'm saying that is because, Mike, you were talking about, hey, we got some 7s and we got some 11s, and I think just by default of basic math, right? If I hear an 8 or I hear a 12 reading, I immediately, my mind says, okay, well, 8 is twice as much as 4. 12 is 3 times as much as 4. So I have 3 times the level of acceptable radon, and it's not necessarily the case. I mean, you mentioned how you've seen a 99 rating. I've had low 20s in my personal homes. In the Sioux Falls area, I personally have seen plenty in the high teens and 20s as well. I mean, obviously, Mike, that being what you do day in and day out, you get to see more homes and properties. But that educational aspect of the piece of it, saying, hey, just because you went from a 4 to a 6 does not mean like, hey, we got to vacate the house, and there's a different approach to it.
That's right. And I make my living. The wheelhouse of my business is correcting homes through mitigation of homes that tested high. So having said that, we're encouraging the testing side of it. But you're right, Marcus, that's a linear number. That number can go from 4 to 12, or in some houses, it could go into infinity or into the hundreds. So the assumption might be is, oh my goodness, do I head for the tall grass because I have a radon of 12, because 4 times 3 is 12, it's 3 times the average? Well, that's a safe thought assumption, but no, we don't want to be too fearful and surprised that it might be more the rule than the exception that you might have an elevated radon level in your home, whether you're in South Dakota or Minnesota or in that red zone or other zones of the nation. But know that it is not costly to check for through different avenues of testing, and it's not that terrible it's not that expensive of a fix to correct a home with elevated radon. So don't run from a house, or don't be scared of an inspection report that would show a radon 4 to 8 or into the teens or 20s even. That's kind of what we're seeing out there in the field in this region.
And I think we're fortunate here in the Sioux Empire, Mike, where you have been taking your time, and thank you for your time here this afternoon to inform our audience and more about radon. So then they're not seeing that fear approach of it. I definitely feel like our market here in the Sioux Empire, they are more educated because of the time that you're willing to give to podcasts and TV shows and radio shows to say, hey, one thing to know is it can be affordable to check for it, and it can be affordable to mitigate for it. So the best is, if you have any concerns about it, simply reach out to your realtor, or reach out to your property inspector, or reach out to Mike and inquire about how to get testing done to see if you do have any radon, high levels of radon in your homes, and if you do, what are your options? And furthermore, maybe you just you're okay with it. I mean, maybe you're at a 5 or 6 and you're like, hey, I mean, that's just a little bit above the EPA benchmark. So I'm gonna let it ride.
That's right. And the concerns can vary widely among homeowners or people in the market to or buy or sell a house. Is there a propensity or some health issues in a family that they're more concerned about it? So that might be more of a reason to test for radon. Or there's people that, maybe they're not home very much, or that the radon of 4 to 6 or 8 that they see quite or read about is quite common, that they might just wait off on it and consider testing later or additionally, or get a correction after the fact or after a home sale. But it's, as you said, in the real estate market, where your first line to explain to home buyers, oh, what's this inspection report? This is something on a disclosure statement, along with maybe paint or electrical or roof condition or radon. So that's where it gets front and center in the real estate market as a realtor, to explain to your clients and to home buyers and where they get their information.
Mike, you mentioned that you kind of ran into that one property that had that 99 reading. People kind of ask, okay, well, where's radon coming from? One thing, the first thing when you hear about radon, it's like, okay, well, it's a radioactive gas. You're like, whoa, okay, obviously alarm there. Anytime you hear radioactive, that's a little concerning. But I think the other part is it's a natural occurrence, right? I mean, this is talking about a gas that comes up from our soil or subsoil, and certain subsoils just tend to emit more than other subsoils.
That's right. Anything above it can be ambiguous in how they measure radon, like say carbon monoxide or other is ppm, parts per million. Radon registry on the test results is picocuries per liter. We could go into that too later, but anything above 4 picocuries per liter is recommended for further testing or considering action. But yes, you're right. It is a breakdown in the soil. It's natural. It's naturally decay products from uranium, iridium, and it has a half-life. It has a decay process that gets into radon, and the exposure in the long term can be a lung cancer issue. It's not something that's going to take you out overnight. It's something that's long term, and if it's something you want to address, that's fine. But generally, any house could be affected by it. It doesn't pick on the age of the home, the size of the home, or design. Its concentration is from the decay products in the ground, and it's the source strength and concentration in the soil under your specific property. And that's why you have to test for it, since you don't sense it or smell it. It's an odorless, colorless gas. That's how you would find out. And it's an affordable method and an accurate way to test your home.
What types of soils are more conducive to higher radon levels?
Well, for those of us in the farming community, which is, we got the flatlands here in the Sioux Empire and in southern Minnesota, soils can be radically diverse in 1 acre or a plot or a section, but it's just the transportability, like a gravelly, more porous soil, or in our audience with the Wisconsin glaciers that defrosted 6 to 10,000 years ago. They tore up the soil and created cavities and pockets that captured the radon levels. So that was where you got your source strength. I like to pick on river valleys and maybe a sandy aggregate soil as opposed to hard packed clay, but any soil can have it if it's got a hot strength in the ground and its ability to transport. It can get to your house no matter age or design.
I think that's interesting, right, Medic? Because again, to your point exactly, it's kind of hard to give like a general, hey, this is where you're likely going to have high radon. And I'll just speak in terms of personal experience. The last house that myself, my family, we lived and owned in was it was literally on the side of a hill. It was a newer development. we were called halfway up the hill, so we had a pretty good slope that we were on. I think a lot of people kind of, especially the builders, when they work the dirt, I mean, there wasn't that much black dirt in this development because it was hilly. Once you kind of strip the black dirt in our area, you do kind of run into some of that clay type dirt. And with my house specifically, like I said, I was in the low 20s, but I had a neighbor who was like 5 or 6. I had one that was kitty corner from me that was like a 1.8, and then I had another one that was kitty corner from me that was in the high teens. So and Mike, we've talked about this, and Jason, I know just from us growing up on the farm, we look at our parents' farm land that they had. I mean, you could see it when it got close to fall or during drought years. You could see what areas of the farmland had different type of subsoil, because they were always the first ones that kind of would dry out and would look weathered or maybe even look burnt in some cases of the year. And it's like, okay, what's going on here? It's like, well, yeah, you kind of talk to data, and it's like, well, yeah, I mean, this little chunk, maybe the size of a quarter acre or a third acre, just had some gravel and in some cases, rocks, which, we got the pleasure of picking up and removing. But, I mean, that to your point, I mean, you could go over a couple hundred acres and you'll get these little pockets that just have a different type of subsoil, and that may be more what it's related to.
Yeah, it doesn't discriminate on size or design of the home, even new homes, or what you might think. Oh shoot, I'm in a neighborhood that I see these radon systems and houses across the street and next door. I better just call and get it done. We get those requests. Well, I didn't get my home tested, but I want it done. I said, no, let's do us both a favor. It could be a consolation for that person. It might test low, and that's why you want to check, because as you said, the randomness of the soil, and you could have an old drafty house or an old house that has poor insulation, and it's pulling radon up from the ground. You'd think it's got vacuum effect. It's got all those things that are strike 1, 2, and 3 against a particular house. You would think on the surface, and then it's going to come back not high. So, don't be too defeatist in assuming that your home's going to have a high radon as well.
Sure.
Some of the few benefits, the very few benefits of having a house that breathes well, right? You
That's right.
You get some fresh, maybe not nice to the utility bills, but at least you're getting some fresh air through those older windows and doors.
Yeah. We're going to be counterproductive here and talk you out of putting in new insulation and windows. No, that's not the case. But actually, some draftiness and lack of insulation can create a lot of different effects that can raise your radon as well if you don't have updated energy efficiency as well.
You kind of look at the health risks here, and I'm just on your website. You got a great website, Mike. It's DakotaRadonMitigation.com. Again, DakotaRadonMitigation.com. And just in the Sioux Falls area, 1 in 3 homes in Sioux Falls are estimated to have elevated levels of radon. Mm-hmm. You're 7 times more likely to die from radon-induced lung cancer than from a house fire. You think of all the stuff that we do to prevent, to get safety for home fires. But, you see a stat like that, it's just like, for how affordable it is. Same thing with like a home, right? I mean, you usually can call your local fire department and they'll come out and install fire alarms for you. So that's something interesting. And, but one of the links I kind of sent out, or not links, but one of the entities out there, the American Lung Association, Radon Action Month is January. They've aligned themselves with the EPA and the CDC just to make sure that we're kind of getting that information out. Radon has an interesting history. The founder of it, the circumstances of the situation. I've always found it interesting, maybe more so now, now that I'm a father of 3 daughters, but it's got a very interesting and cool history.
Are you talking about or thinking about Marie Sklodowska-Curie, Marcus?
That'd
Are
be
you
the
talking
one.
about the science and history?
Yeah, we got to be careful.
I love that. I'm with you, Marcus. That's definitely go there as well. But yeah, Marie Sklodowska-Curie, that's how we get the measurement name. She was the founding mother of radioactivity, if you would say. She's a great study, born in Warsaw, Poland, 1867, war-torn country, education opportunities poor, but she was a prodigy. So she gathered up some resources and went to France, which was the education center of Europe at that time. And as a woman, especially even then, was even harder to get education. So she went there under different alias names and uh, under auspices of other people, but they figured out her work. She developed her credibility and got two separate. They just once they figured out who she was, they just let her write her book. She was peers with Einstein, Nikolai Tesla, in that same genre. Later on, she got two separate Nobel Science Awards in chemistry and physics. She developed in World War I and II between then X-ray technology and mobile X-ray units for the field, in the ward out in the field for X-ray technology to detect shrapnel in the soldiers, and just went on from there. So she developed the science behind how we find the breakdown products of uranium and radon, and the breakdown and how it pierces the soil, the different skin layers that it can penetrate and cause a damage in the long term. So if anybody, especially you got daughters or anybody with kids that like science, or a pastor, I remember saying back years ago, you young people, you need to study. But she was a definite good study for not only the history, but her science knowledge that she's still a pioneer today.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think it is awesome. Just the resilience too. I mean, during that time, that era, just taking no for an answer. If you want something bad enough, and you're talented enough and dedicated enough, and you work hard enough, you will find your success. You will find the top of the mountain. So it's definitely a super cool story and history behind it. We talking a little bit about the soil, right, and talking about old houses, new houses, and if you think about radon, like how is radon getting into my house? I mean, like you said, there's a lot of different ways. It's naturally in the subsoil, so nothing you can really do about that in terms of and like I guess maybe you could do a soil sample, but the common radon entry points, small cracks in the concrete slab, sump pump basins, which is required for new construction in our area. Jason, I believe it is up as well for you guys up in the Twin Cities. If you're building a new house,
Yep.
the builder has to put drain tile and a sump pump basin in.
Yeah, I mean your drain tile is conducive. It's corrugated 4-inch diameter slit tubing that goes under for water drainage, and it can also be a channel for radon. Um, Joints between the cold joint between floor and wall, and everybody knows concrete to some degree. There might be some cracking, not a problem, not unusual, but radon likes those joints and cracks and drain tile to get through, and then through the ventilation. Um, the concentration and then its ability to transport into the home is how it will kind of effervesce and expand from your lower level to your higher level through ventilation and especially forced air circulation. But you're right; it's kind of you don't really know there. You don't just do a soil sample. That's really not the effective way to do it. It's the effective way to test is an air sample, like through a professional home inspection, like on real estate, is a very good way where there's electronic monitoring that has data. The consumer, with if they don't want to sell their house or they just want to get data on their own, they can get them online. They can get them in stores. They can get them a lot of different sources for not a whole lot of money.
Mike, did you know that there's two types of concrete?
Just two? I think you might be going somewhere, Jason.
There's two types of concrete, Mike. The concrete that has cracked and concrete that will crack.
Yes, that's absolutely right, because weather expansion and it's just going to crack to some degree, and that's not all bad. It's just how thick, right? Don't be surprised to find some cracks in a foundation.
That's right.
We never see any of that.
But when you do see it, people get alarmed. I mean, they even like a hairline. I mean, it could be the tightest, smallest crack, and they're like, "Holy buckets, we got problems." So it's like, well, if I remember correct, and I could be wrong with this, but I want to say the National Association of Home Builders have in a sense a protocol for concrete, and if I'm not mistaken, I want to say if it's less than a quarter inch. Definitely, I want to say it's a quarter inch because I thought it was. I was kind of surprised that it was like that. That it is considered cosmetic. Might be an eighth of an inch. I'll have to look into that. But I mean that's something where when you have hairline cracks, it's just that's the nature of concrete, and concrete's evolving too. I mean they're starting to add some new tech into it to make it lighter. Allowing it to harden during cold temperatures, so you can pour concrete, during the winter months that we have up here. Interesting. Concrete is definitely evolving into a different type of product than what it was, 20, 30 years ago.
Oh yeah. Yeah. They can pour it at really cold temps and finish it out with the different calcium and chemicals. It's really another interesting field.
You talked about testing, Mike. We got short-term testing, long-term testing, charcoal tests. The electronic continuous radon monitors. I mean, that is what I'm more familiar with. I think I've seen a couple of the radon tests that you can buy from the big box stores. They look like a can of shoe polish. Pretty. Yes, thank you. Yeah, there it is.
We're not really brand specific here. I'm not bought and paid for by certain companies here, but yeah, you're right. A little hockey puck charcoal device, something like that.
Super easy, super cheap. Jason, I think we see more of it looks like you got another one there.
Some electronic ones that have become more available in the last few years. You can do into your Wi-Fi system.
Wow.
That's interesting.
These online. They give you a continuous reading through your phone. So there's lots of good, accurate ways, as you said, Marcus.
The continuous radon monitor, I mean, that's the one that I'm most familiar with because it seems like that's what all the property inspectors have. And I always find the report super interesting. I mean, everybody kind of focuses on the average, right? The average number. But those continuous monitors, I mean, they tend to pull a reading about once every hour. And it's interesting to see how it fluctuates. There's some, you might have an average of let's say 2, but you may have it a couple peak hours up at 6, and then maybe you had the majority of the hours were down in 1. So it's interesting to see how it can ebb and flow with that radon reading if you're taking hourly readings.
I'd love to see a study done and focusing on what type of activity is going on in the house when those radon levels come in, and so what's going on when they're higher, what's going on when they're lower? Is there people in the house? Are you cooking? Someone in the shower, you got the doors and windows open and closing. I mean, it would be interesting to see what type of activity is, or is there no activity? Is the house vacant and there's nothing going on? I'd be interested to see a study like that.
Yeah, those are all good points. And especially when you're dealing with the real estate transaction. And as you'd seen, Marcus, you're pointing out a graph of a professional home inspection unit that gives you an hour-to-hour report and a graph chart. So it can look like a heartbeat rhythm over 48 hours, say 48 readings, 1 per hour, where it will jump up. And the dynamics of air exchange in a house is pretty crazy. So when a ventilation system kicks in or shuts off, or if somebody opens a door, there's a mad rush of air to escape or to enter to equalize the pressure of the house from inside to outside. So that hour-to-hour analysis does reflect a lot of those questions you have, and you can do that with door tests and more advanced equipment that might not be radon oriented. But those professional radon home inspection monitors are the ones you want, because that can pick up and show if maybe somebody left a window open during a test, or maybe somebody was moving and maybe didn't quite have closed conditions, or you might not have gotten the depiction you wanted of a closed house radon exam. So that's very important to emphasize the value of a professional home inspection radon test.
You kind of talked about the air pressure. That was something that I've just have seen with the number of radon reports that I've come across through a real estate transaction is, you can see when there's a big barometric pressure change, maybe a strong low front pushing through or a strong high front pushing through, during that period. I mean, you can see a big jump or big decline during that storm that shoved through over like an 8-hour window. And I always find that, super interesting, but it makes sense. I mean, my one hobby is to go fishing, and they always say, the fish, sometimes shut down during those big pressure changes. And it's like, well, I guess it makes sense,
Yeah, that's right. And this is you could spin off on the Marcus Walgrave meteorology weather report at 6. I mean, you're describing that. And Jason, the a barometric drop, or like wind conditions or bad weather, and again, this is Marcus Walgrave material here, right? Where if you have a lower barometric pressure, the radon in the house, the radon in the ground has less of a fight to get up. So that can spike up with the barometer change, or if the barometer pressure increases, it pushes the radon back down. Or like if you're in a garage or you're in an attic space, and then somebody opens the garage door, the big garage door, to come in with their car, you get air ramming through the attic and you get blasted by wind. But all those things really can have an effect on your air exchange and on an hour-to-hour radon reading. That's why it's important to have a long-term test because of 48 hours, because that equalizes those nuances. So you're still going to get a good report, but you need at least 48 hours to capture and normalize those unique situations.
Mm-hmm. I think the charcoal one might even be a number of days too. It might be a little bit longer than the 48 hour one. So you can get
that one I just showed was a canister, and they can come in bottles. That's a 2 to 4 day. This fella here is a long term, like 90 plus days. You can get those. You can order them. So if you're not in a hurry, sometimes a long term multi-seasonal spread radon check might be good. Again, those are just different ways to capture your data.
It's when you're kind of looking for some radon information, obviously you're going to find a lot of it here in the month of January. If you have any questions and concerns, you can always reach out to your realtor in the Sioux Empire, the tri-state area. In my opinion, Mike Oz is the number one go-to person. He's my go-to. DakotaRadonMitigation.com is his website. Always a good way to reach out to Mike. And even if you just have some questions, you can email him through there or find his number as well, and call and ask some questions. When you're thinking about choosing a radon mitigation expert, as with any industry, right? Not everybody's created equally when we look at this. And Mike, I'm biased. I've always had you work in my house. If I can, I refer you to all my clients because I really appreciate your experience, your expertise, your honesty, but also your product too. I really a lot of the times, a lot of our homes have these sump pump basins that that you can get in there and draw the radon out and get it outside of the house. but they, you definitely have a product that I find more appealing, not only visually, but just the overall functionality of it as well. And because a lot of the time, a big concern is, okay, we got the sump pump basin. Well, it wasn't installed to capture radon to help Mike get it out of the house. That wasn't the reason. It was to collect water. If there is any, to keep the house from getting water damage. So what do we put in sump pump basins? Well, typically we put sump pumps in there. And but if we're trying to get radon in, you need to cap that sump pump basin. But with your product, you have some additional features that make the homeowners feel very comfortable with your system in there. They're still comfortable that they can test their sump pump. They can get access to that basin, and have been very pleased with your products and your services.
Well, appreciate working with you over the years, and hope that trend continues, and on TV and on the podcast and radio. And yeah, there's lots of good ways to install a radon mitigation system, and it has to work in conjunction if it does have a sump pump basin, as you said. All those salient things that we've looked first, right? Some grungy basement, this little mini manhole hidden behind the corridor there. You got to have it right, and you got to have it accessible and to be practical. And the famous war between engineers and mechanics when they're designing cars, you want to have it user consumer friendly, where it can be worked on and it won't break, and it's accessible to work in the other complementary things that are needed. So you don't just want to install something and walk away. You want to make sure things work together. You want to have things wired right with electrician. You want to make sure things are done safely. I've tried to do that, and there's lots of places people can go, like through the real estate market, through the realtor, like the Walgrave family, who's been at it a few years. They know what they're doing. They know how to get things corrected and know what to look for. So you got to talk to the right people, and you got to know that there's independent information people can get to. They don't just have to take my word for it, but checking and getting the job done right is important.
You kind of take it to the next level. There's some electrical work that needs to be done when installing a system. Since you're not an electrician, you hire an electrician to do that part of your system, and also the testing. Kind of relying on that unbiased third party to come in and to test your work, so you don't have a conflict of interest. I think that's why myself, my clients, my team, and my team's clients, they always come to you for their radon needs, and you do an excellent job.
Well, I appreciate that, and you're only as good as your last job, right? That's why you want to retest, and that's why you want to have, in anything in life, you probably want independent testing. Let me come in with my snake oil and these magic potions and sell you a product, and then, oh yeah, I'll guarantee it, or I'll use my equipment to test what I installed. Of course, everything's going to be, but that's why you want to have a third party test. That's why you want to use testing devices to check your work, no matter what we do, so that it's not just your word on it. And that's why independent testing, as you talked about, is important.
Mike, before we finish up today's show, one thing that just let everybody know, is you can get radon in your homes with homes that have basements, but also the slab on grades too. Again, just kind of going back to the cracks in the foundation. If you're not real familiar with new construction, you may have never seen it, but they pour the foundation first, and then they come back and then they pour the basement floor. So and obviously, since it's not one continuous pour, you're going to have some little gapping just by default of those, excluding any cracks, if you can somehow avoid any cracks in your concrete. But the reason I'm saying is, if you look at a slab on grade, obviously no basement, right? And we're not excavating too far into the ground of 4-foot settings. Is that, I think, that's required for footings for a foundation in a home. So there is some excavating, but that slab is in a sense sitting on the top, but you can still get it. Don't worry. A radon expert like Mike Austad, they can still come in there. They can still come up with a plan to get the radon out, even if you don't have a sump pump basin. Mike's been around for long enough where you've been able to see a lot of homes and find a solution for it. So make sure you guys are working with the experts. Can't emphasize that enough.
Well, thanks, Marcus. You brought up a pretty cool point about on-grade homes that are kind of trendy, where you don't have to step downstairs, no basement. And as Jason said, the two types of concrete and the pours that are going to happen is concrete that hasn't cracked or concrete that will crack, that just hasn't cracked yet. But that's not the end of the world. But some of my biggest challenge, and this is a moment of confession, that I've had a couple of challenges where retesting comes back. It's like, oh, we got to, this house on grade was not the slam dunk we thought it was. So sometimes the on grade homes can be a challenge to mitigate. And you think it's a non-issue, but no, there's something on the ground here. Just because it didn't have a basement, it still could have high radon. And we're always learning new things. We'll just go with that.
Mike, thank you so much for coming on and talking about radon, talking about National Radon Action Month. We have Radon Awareness Week with the CDC this week, January 24th through the 28th. American Lung Association also addressing Radon Action Month. You are definitely our go-to guy, so I appreciate you, Mike.
Thanks a lot. It's great to see you guys again. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike.
And thank you for everybody for tuning in today's show, supporting us here at US Home Talk. As always, you guys can find today's show and all of our past shows on our website, ushometalk.com, or wherever you guys find your podcasts. This is Marcus Walgrave, Jason Walgrave. We hope you guys have a blessed week.